This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Krimitsos, who's based in Tampa in Florida. Katie has had an eventful career, and as well as being a busy mum, she's also the founder of the Women's Meditation Network, where she creates many different types of love notes to women. Having a second baby and a determination to be both a great mum and a great business person guided her to this business, which has allowed her to achieve both. Is this too much for every parent to strive for? Let's hear from Katie. Welcome to Katie Krimitsos to the Win Happy podcast. Did I get your name okay?
You did. It was great. Congrats.
Yeah, we had a brief rehearsal, didn't we?
A brief rehearsal, but believe it or not, my maiden name is actually a lot harder than that one. So I'm very used to people being like, "Can I just call you Katie? Can that be okay?" I'm like, "Absolutely."
Go on. What was your maiden name?
It was Krimitsos. Very
Krimitsos.
German. Yeah, Krimitsos. Very German. You needed to know how to pronounce that with the Z at the end. So yeah, it was just Katie K my whole life. I've been able to stay that way.
Well, you see, you get all of these people with strange names in Tampa, Florida.
I know. Apparently, right?
So how is it over there? What time of the morning is it?
It is about 10:30 in the morning right now. It is summer here for us. It's beautiful. It's our, it's the time of the year where most people don't love to be here, but I love it. I grew up in Arizona, so I was used to the desert, very hot. This is very different. We definitely have like the humidity and everything, but it's just beautiful. Like we try to be outside as much as we can.
Now you're the producer and the founder of Women's Meditation Network. Yep. And I know there's a podcast series and there's a whole load of affiliated services to go with that. But before we get into all of that, what I like to do is for the listener to figure out who the hell are you and where did you come from?
That's a big question.
I know. And what led you on this little path? So, Katie, a very straightforward question. Who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Who am I? Let's see. I am one of 6 kids who grew up in Arizona, a small little town in Arizona. So I was a small town kid, like 130 people in my graduating class, that kind of a thing. I knew everyone growing up, had in sort of the mix, have really great parents who raised really independent, free-thinking kids, I think, for the most part. And each of us sort of went off in our own little ways that were appropriate for us. The fire in me, though, has always been very strong in that I've always desired more, not more for the sake of having more, but more for the sake of the journey of, I know I'm here to be more, do more, experience more, all that sort of stuff. So have always been incredibly self-introspective. I can very easily recall, times of even elementary school, sort of having this internal dialogue with myself about how to get what I wanted to get, right? Or how to do or manage situations or what have you. Fast forward, moved out of the small town, did my undergrad at Arizona State, ended up coming out to Florida. That's how I ended up in Tampa to do my graduate work in communication and women's studies, and had every intention of becoming a PhD professor. I would change the lives of women, in the academic setting. And it took me all of 3 months to be in a program there to realize, this isn't for me. I don't think I really like this. Feels too constricting. I was so green to how political academia, or really any kind of setup really is. And so just after I finally graduated with my master's, sort of went on to figure things out very, very imperfectly, and bounced around in the career world for a little while. And have always wanted to write. I always sort of had this passion for writing and wanting to communicate via words. And so at some point in there, I wrote a book which is not even worth mentioning, other than the fact that it was at least a catalyst for me to be like, oh, I could write a book, and oh, I now need to learn how to be a business person around this book. I need to learn how to like generate revenue from this book. So that put me on a path to learn entrepreneurship, which I had never known about. Like that was not a part of my history. That was not a part of, my language or reality growing up. So here I was, oh my goodness, how old was I? 29-ish. Yeah, about 29. And got set on this path of like, I want to like figure out how to make money on my own. And this idea felt really cool. Like there was a lot of freedom in that, which has always been really important to me. So I simultaneously met my now husband, Chris, and he's been an entrepreneur since he was in diapers. And so it was very much like this sort of easing into, he had a company that he had just started. And so I sort of was like, hey, let me help you out with that. And that sort of began my entrepreneurial journey. Very quickly kind of quit my full-time job. And ever since then, have been on this very interesting entrepreneurial path. And for me, the entrepreneurial path has been sort of one of the main ways that I have learned who I am and what I'm here to do and what my purpose is, what my dharma is, how I am here meant to be. And it's given me really this incredible reason to go inside out and upside down and figure myself out. And so one of the other elements of that is also then becoming a mother. I became a mother about 7.5 years ago. I now have 2 daughters. And so that's been another area where it's been like, okay, I'm going to learn about myself here. So to bring that to current and to give us a snapshot, I have, you and I are in the space of podcasting. I have part of that entrepreneurial journey had me start podcasting back in 2014. So I can't say I was like, the grandmother of podcasting, but maybe a great auntie. It was definitely back in the early days. And I had a whole business show back then. It was an interview show. And it was great. It gave birth to a really phenomenal business for me that I really loved. I was coaching, I was producing masterminds and just helping women grow their businesses. And then in 2018, I found out we were pregnant with our second daughter and just within a heartbeat was like, nope, don't want that anymore. And if I don't want that, what do I now want? And that space is really where the Women's Meditation Network was born. And for me, it made a lot of sense. For most anyone else looking around at me, it didn't make sense at all. No one really knew I was a meditator. I've been a very imperfect practitioner of meditation since I was about 19 years old. I'm 44 now. And so, I understood the power of meditation. I understood that I could be a writer and I could write these beautiful love notes to women and really encapsulate them within a meditation and let them have that experience that could be very powerful, much like a song, and its lyrics are really powerful. And that's something I've always equated it to. Being a podcaster, I knew I could do this as a podcast. I knew that the space was open. I didn't really know how. I knew it would be a network because there was enough content and enough different types of women and enough different types of meditations and experiences that women really wanted. So I knew it could be big. I just didn't know how it would. So I started with one podcast, Meditation for Women, 5 years ago. Fast forward, had my second daughter. Fast forward again. Now my kids are 7.5 and 4.5, and the Women's Meditation Network is 5 years old. And we now have 14 podcasts that are a part of the network, all providing guided meditations that are kind of span the array of women's experiences or types of women or times of day or what have you. So that kind of brings us to present.
Now, that was one hell of a whistle-stop tour.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't say it's complete, as I'm sure no one has the complete answer to that question, right?
And I'm holding tight onto that train just to make sure I'm there and I've taken it all in. You said you're one of 6 kids. Your mom and dad, what do they do? My
mom has been a nurse her whole life. So she was an RN. So like she worked in the baby ward for a while at the hospitals, home health care. By the time I was growing up, it was home health care. And then she eventually switched into being like the nurse at our elementary school. So she did that her whole life. And then my dad worked for the post office. He was a mailman for all of my life until he retired. And but he's a tinkerer. He's a Mr. Fix-It. So like he fixes watches and clocks and all sorts of stuff. So he's always had like side things going, kind of doing all of that sort of stuff. So very blue collar, lower income, just getting by, but lots of fun, lots of togetherness. Family togetherness is an immense value of ours. And so I feel like that's translated very beautifully in each of us.
Did he listen to the S-Town podcast, did he?
No. Oh, I don't think so.
You've heard them, have you?
No. What is that?
Oh my God. Well, S-Town was kind of short for Shit Town.
Okay.
Oh, it's the most amazing American podcast.
Oh, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and it's all about a guy who fixes clocks.
Oh, really?
Antique clocks and the kind of original signature in each clock and the intricacies of them.
Oh, I got to introduce him to that. He'd love that.
But it's kind of like a murder series, surprisingly, into this clock fixer guy. So,
he would love that.
Yeah. Oh my God, your dad would definitely like that. So it sounds like a very, I'm not going to use the word civil service type family, you know, the good stable jobs and all of that stuff. Tell me, what were the conversations at the dinner table?
Growing up, it was very much, I don't know. We just talked about our days. Ironically, we did not talk about politics. These are very clear things that we did not do. We did not talk about politics. We did not talk about money. We didn't really talk about what was going on in the world. It was very micro. It was about our family, who was doing what sport, what happened today, what friends are mad at you and why, and how can we work that out. It was more about like just the moving along of the family. You know what I mean? Like helping us all grow up. Those were really the conversations.
Okay. And were you in a small town or was it a suburbia or what
very
was it
small?
like?
Yeah, very small town. I was raised just south of Tucson, Arizona. So it's like halfway between Tucson and Nogales, which is right on the border of Mexico. So my town I would consider like a borderlands. It was very like, everything was half in Spanish, half in English. And the Mexican culture was very ingrained in me growing up, still is. And so yeah, it was, you mentioned civil service. It was very much about, and my parents led with modeling this. Like it was about kindness. It was about helping other people. It was about follow your dreams because everything else will work itself out. Don't follow the money. Follow what you love to do because everything else will work itself out.
Okay. Is that true? Is it?
I believe so. Yeah, I really do believe so. We've all have to kind of like learn that the hard way, I think. But, my version of it is like really get clear on who you are. Like my number one job is to know myself. And when I know myself, I can hear what is meant for me and I can take action towards that. And everything always works out that way. Everything always works out. When I did that transition I mentioned from, sort of stopping that one podcast and starting this women's meditation network, most people thought I was nuts because it was a very successful business. It was very established. There was no reason why I should have said goodbye to it. And I'm doing this meditation thing that I have no right to do. I don't have any credentials that sort of like validate me to do this. Who am I to show up to the mic to do these meditations and to actually build this network? And I, definitely those voices came into my head like, oh my gosh, am I just self-sabotaging? What am I doing? But I knew I had to do it. I knew that this was the next step. I was scared of it, but that my knowing was greater than my fear. And it's worth mentioning because I feel like that listening to self, kind of infused by my parents' lesson of follow what you love, follow your heart, and everything works out, has been really powerful for me because they have helped me learn how to make those decisions, listen in, make those decisions that sometimes are very hard, but for a parent to watch their kid make decisions. But I have had the freedom to make those decisions and to sometimes stumble and fall on my face and nope, that didn't work out. But always knowing like, I'm going to be okay. And so I have had so many opportunities to flex that muscle of listening to my intuition, listening to my gut, listening to my heart, taking the next steps forward, sometimes, at a sprinter's pace and sometimes at a snail's pace. And it's always worked out. Like I've always been led to the next thing that leads me to the next thing. And as long as I'm staying in tune, like I'm good.
You have to have a very clear head to listen to yourself properly, don't you?
Oh, yeah. You have to, and this is why I love the tool of meditation, why I love sharing it, but you have to have a practice that allows you to practice distinguishing between what I call the noise of the world, which is very loud, happening all the time. It's all those constant thoughts in our head, and the voice. So what's the difference between the noise and the voice? And the voice tends to whisper. The voice doesn't tend to shout very often. It's the noise that tends to shout, I got to do this. And it raises that anxiety level of like, I have to do this because of this thing that eventually is really distilled down to fear. But yeah, you have to have a practice, I believe, to really start learning your own head and start understanding what thoughts are coming from the noise and what thoughts are coming from the voice.
Yeah, and learning the difference between the two of them is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned before we started that I'm recording this now. It's actually the first podcast that I'm recording from our little summer house.
Yay!
And it's in a totally different location. Where we live is in suburbia, but it's suburbia to a city, busy. The pace down here is an awful lot different.
Yeah.
It's a house on a hill, lots of summer houses, and for the most part, there's nobody in them. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of locked in and we're working from here and all that kind of thing. But I can feel it changing me, and I can feel the speed of everything changing, voice becoming a little bit clearer that you're talking about. But it's a change. It's a big change. And I'm still very much getting used to it, which is quite an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
The young Katie, when she's in school, and for whatever reason, the teacher has lost your attention, where does your head go?
Oh, oh my goodness. I don't know. I probably just was always a daydreamer in some sense. I don't know if I would have described myself as that back then, but now looking back, I can see, I would just daydream about like whatever I wanted to achieve. I've always been a high achiever. Like there's always been something in me, innate in me, that's like, I want to achieve. I want to have the experience of like succeeding and doing and like just this impact. Like I don't know where that came from. It just has always been in me. And so I tend to be tireless in that, always wanting more. My work has had to be distinguishing is the fire that's fueling that coming from a space of ego of like, I'm not enough and therefore I need to achieve in order for you to tell me I'm enough. Or I really love this pace. Like this is really fun. This is a big game for me, right? Anyway, but to answer your question, I think I've always been some sort of a daydreamer of like, I might be doodling, whatever, but it was more of wanting, like my thoughts really wanting me to pay attention because I was definitely a good student. I wanted to be a good student. That was very important to me. I wanted to learn. But then also like daydreaming about like what would be, like, what am I doing? If I were in junior high in this particular situation, what's high school going to be like? Like what, like I would start envisioning like what that was all about. So I think I was a little bit of a visionary manifester back then before I even knew what those words really were.
And tell me, has Arizona changed you as a person? Do you think if you'd grown up somewhere else that you'd be different?
I'm sure. I mean, our environments always have a huge impact on us, right? I think the manner in which I grew up in that I was in the desert, small little town, like our 3 streets back then. And like, I was born in 78. So like in the 80s really is when I kind of had my childhood there. I can remember there were like 3 streets that sort of had tract housing on them. And that's kind of where we lived. Literally everyone else in the town was on some land, where they had acreage, like, or just a lot of space. And so I was outside a lot. I was barefoot a lot. I was, we kind of had like what we would probably now consider a very wild childhood. We were always playing. The benefit of having so many siblings is there was always like a playmate, right? So we were riding bikes through the trails. I can look back now and really love and honor the small town experience that I had. Really, it felt really safe. It felt really, just like we all grew up together. Like I knew people in high school that I had known since we were in preschool together, and it just felt really good. Like families knew each other. Everyone watched out for each other. So there was a lot of good in that. So yeah, I feel like that has definitely impacted me and sort of this level of rootedness that I crave and I love. And I have noticed ever since I've become a mom, I have done my best to sort of establish that rootedness, that even because we haven't moved since we've had kids. So we've sort of been in the same space, same community. And so it's been important to me to sort of have that community rootedness, but also the rootedness of each other in our family. Like that's a really big deal. You know, a part of my childhood was that my parents moved out to Arizona when they were pregnant with me from Chicago. So like all of their siblings were in Chicago, but we were kind of this solo family kind of out here in the desert sun. My dad's parents were there. They were about 10 minutes away from us, but that was it. So it was just us. And I feel like that had such an impact on how deeply connected we were. I mean, we're a messed up family, just like everyone, right? Like we're not perfect. We're dysfunctional in our own fun ways, but like for the most part, we're really close and we're very committed to that closeness. And I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that we were separated from everyone. And this was a good part about it. And we had all these like aunts and uncles. I'm putting my fingers in, quotes right now. Like, we would kind of adopt all these aunts and uncles around us, all my parents' friends and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it absolutely impacted me. I find myself in my 40s now craving more of that. We live in like a suburban area now, and we definitely have like our next step for family is really to get out on land. Like I really want to be in land in a smaller community. I want to have our space. I want to grow my own food, like all that sort of stuff. So I'm really craving more of that.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference when people do come from those kind of smaller country type locations. And I'm not sure if it's population or the proximity to the land. And I think part of the reason why we've moved on to this part of the country, from a summer point of view, is the people we've experienced from here. I think there's something rooted, as you're describing, something very earthy or earthed about these characters. There's just something deeper going on, maybe a deeper appreciation of life and being close to nature or something, I'm not sure. Your own choices then, education-wise, and I know that brought you to Florida, was part of that I want to get out to the big town type of thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, by the time I was a senior in high school, I was like ready to get out of the small town, right? Like as we all are. So I went first to Tempe, Arizona, which is in the Phoenix metro area. So, big city. And was there for about 5 years finishing my undergrad, and it was great. And then, yes, moved out to Florida to just continue school because truly I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. So I was like, let's just do more school. And, where I moved here was a city as well. Definitely like a lot more, I tend to always gravitate, even if I'm in a city, I tend to gravitate towards nature spots and where can I breathe? I'm not one who would do well in New York City living there because I'm like, I need grass under my feet. I need to breathe. I don't need so much cement around. But yeah, that had a lot to do with it is like, I need to go out and explore. I need access to openness and more opportunities than I knew was available to me then. Like it was never a question in my mind that I would ever not leave. Like, of course I'm going to leave. Of course I'm going to leave the town. Of course I'm going to go off to, just go explore what else is out in the world.
I do think, and while you're talking meditation, I often pass those apartment blocks in the middle of the cities and thinking it can't be too healthy for your head to look out your window and see traffic and shops and, to literally be on top of other people.
Yeah.
You come in the door of your property and there's so many other families living within the same place. I can't see that being a good thing for anyone's mental health. Not having grass, not having a garden, not having that space that you're talking about. It must corrode you without even knowing it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't want to judge anyone who's in that space and loves that space because I absolutely have friends who do. That said, I really do see a relationship between how connected we are to nature and understanding that we are nature, like having that connectedness. And I see that connection between like the relationship between that, how connected are you to nature versus how crazy is your mind going? And I really believe that the more we continue to separate ourselves from the cycles of nature, the natural connection between us all, and busy ourselves and absorb ourselves in sort of this, what unfortunately our culture tells us is a progressive lifestyle, which is hurry up and work your, 40 to 80 hour a week job, collect your money, get by all the things, buy more things, go up the ladder. Like, I think that I have had experiences, just a little bit with myself, but mostly just with friends who are in that and are very far away from who they are. And so the importance of nature for me, something as simple as, yes, sticking my feet in the sand, right? Or, being able to walk on the grass I have outside, or being able to tend to my garden, or to walk outside and be in the sun and not have 12 buildings keeping the sun away from me. Like those are all really, to have trees around that I can literally breathe from. All of those things remind me that whatever I'm going through, no matter how heavy or dark it seems, it's all okay, because I'm simultaneously reminded how unique and special I am, and that there's no one else in this entire universe like me. And how tiny of a teeny little speck I am in this grand, huge universe. And so it sort of humbles me, and it keeps everything sort of like, kind of clicks everything back in, like, I'll be okay. And that can come from something as simple as like, petting the neighborhood cat, to, watching the cardinals fly by, and just watching the clouds move over, and just like being in deep appreciation of the world that exists, that's actually so much more grandiose than the cement buildings, being on top of each other, the job that you're rushing to get through just to get the money. Like, there's so much more than that. So I feel like that's the power of nature, in that it reminds us that we are nature. We are a part of that. We do have those cycles.
Yeah, you said something very interesting about your friends. You said you're seeing them and they're very far away from who they are, and you recognize that. That's a peculiar thing to notice in a friend, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you're somebody who is in tune with yourself, it's very easy for you to see and spot when other people are not. And I think in this day of, just a lot of social media, like, I'm going to show up to be who I think I need to be, or I'm going to show up, not even just social media, but like, I'm going to show up to the job that I think I should be doing. I'm going to be in the relationship that I think I should be in because it was the next best thing. It's incredibly sad to me. It's very sad to me that there's not an awakening, or there's not that awareness of that. That's obviously not for you. But it's not my job to do that work. It's my job to be able to recognize it. As a friend, I can engage in certain conversations that help that along. But my job is to make sure I'm using that as a mirror to reflect back on myself. Like, am I deeply rooted in myself? Is there anything here that feels off kilter? Is there anything here that doesn't feel 100% me? And if so, how do I go about dissecting that and unpacking that and making sure that because it's constant work, So how do I make sure I'm constantly showing up as the best possible version of me? And that takes an enormous amount of self-introspection and time and practice and quiet to really listen to that. So yeah, I feel like when you're somebody who is very self-aware, it's very easy to see when somebody's not, or it's very easy to see when a system is not, or something is not showing up authentically,
I've been listening to you, and of course I did my little bit of research as well. And it looks like there's been two phases to your career. Now, writing and kind of creating seems to be the constant, but stage one seems to be business ownership. I know you were Tampa Bay business owner, CEO, and at the same time you were the copywriter and storyteller with, is it Alma Resources?
Yeah.
So would it be fair to describe that as phase one of Katie in the business world?
Yeah, I think so. The Tampa Bay Business Owners was that business my husband had just started, or my then boyfriend, who I was like, let me help you out. And so he was CEO. I ended up becoming COO and part owner in the company. And we ran that for a handful of years. And yes, that was my very first kind of baby steps into entrepreneurship, into business. That's where I fell in love with business. I fell in love with this tool of entrepreneurship. Like, that was like, oh my gosh, you could just create something on your own and put it out there and help people and get paid for it. Like, this is amazing. I don't have to like step into the corporate structure. Like, this is awesome. So there was that. The writing stuff I did sort of as towards the latter end of that career with Tampa Bay business owners as my attempts to like, I've discovered that I'm good at ABC. How can I now make a new business out of that? That's just me. And that was sort of a side thing that didn't really go anywhere. But then really my next phase was actually Biz Women Rock. And that was that first podcast that I did. That was the business focused podcast where I got to actually be like a business coach and strategist. And I, help people grow their companies. I put on all these events. I, had courses and masterminds and all sorts of stuff. So that was kind of phase 2. And then phase 3 would really be in where I am right now, as far as like the career path goes.
What did you learn in each phase?
In phase 1, the biggest lesson that I learned, most of it was very painful because it was all brand new. It was very painful. The biggest lesson that I learned was about money. And it was about money mindset. When I first quit my job and started helping my then boyfriend, all I could think about was like, okay, we have X amount of dollars. And then, so what are we going to do to get more members? And like I was looking at the runway the whole time and constantly living in fear. And believe me, we call those years our peanut butter and jelly years because they were,
peanut butter and jelly years.
That's what we ate. Because it was like, how many credit cards can I max out to be able to just survive the next day? We did everything we could. We put all of our resources in to just keep that business open. And, never mind our personal bills or like keeping us surviving personally. There were a couple things that just sort of like kept us afloat at that point. So there was a very distinctive moment where, my husband, having been an entrepreneur for so long, already got this concept. And he was I was sort of in an employee's mindset. Like, I don't have my paycheck every 2 weeks. How do we make this money? Hurry. Like, we've drained all these accounts. Like I was constantly focused on the lack. And therefore, all of my energy and all of my action was coming from this space of lack. We need more members because we are desperate for this money, right? So I went to a Tony Robbins event and, love or hate Tony Robbins. It was a really powerful event for me because he took us through a practice regarding, and it might have even been regarding money specifically, or it might have been just what I happened to be thinking about, but it doesn't matter what the thing was. I walked out of that event and my mentality had completely shifted and I can't focus on the lack. I've got to focus on what's possible. Like I've got to focus on the belief that we're okay. Everything's okay. We're not destitute. Worst case scenario, we get kicked out of the house because we can't pay the mortgage. And then lucky for us, we've got friends that we could always go stay with. Like the worst case scenario actually wasn't putting us out on the streets. Let's say that, right? So I finally got that. So it was this massive shift into like the space of total like belief and faith and abundance. And Greg, immediately, like the business completely shifted. We immediately, 2 months later, were like finally like in the positive and like finally like really like all the members started coming in. It was so cool to watch. So that was my biggest lesson there.
Do you think, the customers, prospects, potential members, all of that thing, but like your dog or your cat, when they smell fear,
people feel energy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they think Katie's desperate? It's bouncing over.
The answer is yes. Like, can you, I think people consciously or unconsciously feel that energy. Now, I think as a whole, the business as a whole was holding that energy. And so I think the populace out there could, unconsciously sort of feel that, or at least that's the energy that I was emitting from the inside of it. So yeah, people can definitely feel that.
Being an entrepreneur is tough going. And I think no matter who you speak to, whoever has walked that road, people don't give them credit. And a lot of people fall by the wayside and they're quite happy to take jobs again. Yeah. And again, it's easy then for employees or whatever to take shots at you because, oh my God, you're the entrepreneur. You've got the easiest life of all, of course.
Ooh,
and it requires the skill to live in the uncertainty. And you do after a while, it becomes second nature. You were saying that your husband kind of had that because that was in his blood.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that you need to learn to live with. It just doesn't happen accidentally, It's a tough one.
And there's no magic moment when it all like just, okay, it's worked out. I've hit this quote, check mark. I've gotten successful and therefore everything now works and there's no more difficulties. Like I am 14 years into this entrepreneurship journey, third phase of this. things are clicking in a way that they never have before, which is amazing. And I am still showing up and learning so much about myself. And there are moments of like gut wrenching hard that I still have to go through. And I come to it with, at least by this point, I come to it with an understanding like, okay, I had to learn this lesson. Remember that. Like, remember this lesson.
Yeah.
and I ain't going to forget.
Yeah, and you can't buy it. You can't cheat that learning curve. It just, you have to suffer that pain. You have to go through that learning, and it's not going to be handed to you. You know, there's no short way.
Yeah,
I think franchising in a way is a mechanism to shorten that, isn't it? But even still, you still have to learn it. It doesn't
you
matter.
still have to be in the one in there doing it, making it happen. Even if you have a system already set for you, you're still the one there doing it.
Yeah, and shitting a brick when things go wrong and you get a bit nervous or you have a bad day or a bad week or a bad month or whatever.
Yeah.
So phase 3, was that motherhood? Did motherhood bring that change on, do you think?
No, motherhood happened in phase 2. Well, actually, that's not true. Motherhood happened at the end of Tampa Bay Business Owners. So that was at the end of phase 1. That was actually a catalyst to get me out of that company very consciously. And we ended up selling the company shortly thereafter, like when my oldest daughter was about a year old. So that then brought me into phase 2, which was the podcast, the business podcast. And, you know, the biggest lesson there was actually that, like the managing of the kid and the business. And how I still remember, like for the first, God, I'm embarrassed to say this, Scott, for the first like year and a half, maybe 2 years of that business, I had no clue what I was doing. I was like, I'm going to show up and interview people. I didn't start with a vision with that company. I just was like, I'm going to interview people. I know I love entrepreneurship. I know I want to help women. Let me just do this. And it took people like hunting me down, going, will you please coach me? And I'm like, why would you want me to coach you? I don't know. Like, I'm not a coach. I don't understand that. But eventually I started saying yes. And I stumbled upon, like I kept stumbling on what is the business model for this thing? I don't really understand it. So I remember taking myself away on a Katie retreat. My husband was watching the kid. And I remember the very first thing that kind of poured out of me was, what did I call it? My mompreneur statement. I think that it was that. And it was like, here's what's important to me as a mother and as a business owner. And what came out of there was like, I want to be clear on when I'm mom and when I'm business owner. And I really don't want to let the two bleed together. Not that I wasn't both at once, but like on my calendar is what I mean. Like in my schedule, like I didn't want to be the mom who is working with her kid right next to her. Like I don't do well that way. I don't do well trying to do two things at once. So I wanted to be the mom who, when I'm with my kid, I'm 100% present. And when I'm working, I'm 100% present. Right. So that took some like scheduling, right? I ended up coming out with like, here are my values as a mother, as a human being, as a business owner. Like these two things are really important to me. So how is that going to live out in what I'm creating right now? And so, I mean, practically speaking, what it ended up doing was helping me kind of schedule my week so that my daughter at that time was going to daycare, I think twice a week. And so I knew like, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, these were my days to have client work. And then on these other days during her nap time, that's when I would actually do kind of admin work. Right. And so that was really one of my biggest lessons in that particular phase was flexing the muscle to be the mompreneur that I wanted to be, that held my values as the cornerstones, not the results or the success. It was really the value. In Tampa Bay Business Owners days before kids, I was working 100 hours a week because I could. And it was, oh my gosh, it was a lot of work. But I knew, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm not going to buy into that story that I have to do that in order to get this business off the ground and to be successful. And I'm not going to buy into the story that says that I can't have both. Like I'm going to be a really present mom with spending lots of time with my kid. And I'm going to be a very successful and powerful business person. And I'm going to have both. So how do I do that? And that has actually continued into this phase as well. Like I definitely have asked that at the very beginning of Women's Meditation Network. It's a part of the reason why I created this company, because I wanted a business model that gave me time freedom. Because there I was pregnant with my second and had a toddler. I was about to be in a season of a toddler and an infant. I was like, I want time freedom. I don't want to show up for clients right now. This is not the season for me to do that. So I created this whole business model. I created this in line with the values that I have for my family and for what's important to me as a mom and a business owner, like refusing to be like, no, I have to stop doing business while I do my family for a couple of years and then I'll resume business. And by the way, that's totally okay for anyone else. But for me, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to put the gas on both.
What you're saying is so interesting. The Katie retreat.
Yeah, I still do those.
Now, when do you go on one? Is that marked in your calendar, or does it come a point when I need a Katie retreat? And what's that look like when it happens?
Yeah, I've been doing this since actually way before I met my husband. Sometimes it was once a year. Sometimes it was 4 times a year. It didn't really matter. It would just be like, I need some alone time. I'm going to go drive down to the Keys and just, back in those days, get like a $69 hotel. Who cares? Like, let me just go down there and just be in the water, right? Or be next to the water. Even when we got married, and became a couple, like I definitely still was like, I kind of need my own time. Definitely since I become a mom, it is picked up. I've definitely been like, I just need a Katie retreat. My husband already knows I need a Katie retreat. I need 2 days. I need 2 nights because, one night isn't enough. Although it depends on what I need to do, but it's really like, I just need a Katie retreat. Sometimes it's like, I need uninterrupted time to actually get my work done. Like that's kind of what I need because mom life is full of interruptions. Like there's no such thing called me having a 12-hour stretch to just do what I need to do. Like there's no such thing unless I'm getting help in some way. So yeah, so those, I don't schedule those. They just sort of come upon me. I know intuitively when I need them. They tend to be probably 2 to 4 times a year at this point. Sometimes it's me flying up to Chicago to see my cousin who I'm super close with and just being up there with her. Sometimes it's, most of the time it's me just getting away and being by myself. Doesn't really even matter where it is. It's just, I need time. I need quiet. I need not to be interrupted. Mostly at this phase in my life, it's like, I need to not be responsible for anyone for 24 hours. Because that is my life is, in the life of many moms, that many parents, like I'm constantly responsible for other people. I need to not have any responsibility for anyone other than myself right now.
And in the supercharged world that we're talking about, and I think you recognized it in yourself when the babies came along, that you need to change it up so you can succeed well in both. But there is a colossal pressure on, I guess, on parents, but invariably the woman ends up carrying the bulk of that burden to be the super duper high flying business exec. There's a few months after having a baby, and is that impossible?
There's a phrase in sort of the mom community that I might botch it, but you'll get the point. Is that women are expected to work like we don't have families and to mother like we don't work. And it's really a very real pressure. Yeah. Now, I am constantly bucking that, what I believe is a limiting belief. That keeps us limited if I choose to believe that, right? But it's a real pressure. And so much of my work is about kind of quieting all of that and just making sure I'm staying true to that whatever equation. I call it my mommy work equation. Like, what's that equation today? So sometimes it changes daily. Sometimes it changes weekly. Sometimes it's seasonally. But how is that mommy work equation feeling? I remember last summer, to give a comparison. So since day one, Women's Meditation Network has just been in massive growth mode. Like we have just constantly grown. Last year in 2022, I don't remember how many shows I launched, maybe like 5 of them. I don't remember. There were a lot of shows I was launching and I was still doing a lot of the work. So, this summer of last year, I was still writing 100 scripts a month and voicing about 70% of that. So, my kids were in camps, they were doing their thing. We still had a lot of family time, but I remember getting to the end of the summer going, I didn't like how that felt. I didn't feel like, yes, we got a family vacation. Yes, we had all this time with them at home, but like I was using the weekends to like catch up on work. I was just so inundated with just keeping up with everything. And so I remember saying like, I'm going to do next summer differently. And so this summer, my kids are in camp sort of like, intermittently. We have a lot more family time scheduled. My sister just moved close to us. So like, there's just been a lot more family time. And I was kind of chatting with a friend of mine and she's like, how you doing? And I'm like, oh my God, this summer schedule is real. Like I'm in this, I've intended this, I'm creating this with more family time, right? And gratefully, I now have, between last year and this year, I have a team who takes care of a significant amount of that stuff now. So there's definitely, I'm not working nights as much. I'm not working weekends as much. And it's still a lot to handle. So there's just this constant phase of like, how am I managing this? And does it feel good? Does it feel good to me? Does it feel good to my family? Are my kids getting enough time with me? Is my husband and I, are we getting enough time to each other? So it's just a constant like plugging into how I'm doing and knowing that I'm the one who creates it. I am the one who creates a structure. I have the power to change it at any time.
Yeah, and being the entrepreneur, you can call the shots and that's okay. But, when you're in corporate land or whatever, that's so much more difficult for any woman who is rocking up back. So great to have you back, Katie. We missed you. And they expect the same, all guns blazing, Katie, who had no children, to be the person working alongside them suddenly. And that's the expectation. But it's really unrealistic and probably very unfair.
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer around that or whatever. And I'm guessing that all of that subject matter and the specific circumstances for women, led to the women-specific podcast series and movement, I think, that you've created. So the nuts and bolts of the meditation podcast, the different variations of it, and the other things that you do alongside it. Could you quickly take me through that?
Yeah, you're right in that assumption, sort of in that. Yes, I mean, this experience of me being a woman has obviously fueled this fire, but I've wanted to work with women for women since I was a little girl. Like, I have a very feminist father, 5 out of those 6 kids are girls, a very matriarchal mother. So I feel like I've been primed for this my whole life. But yeah, so the Women's Meditation Network, we have 14 different podcasts. Every podcast is providing a guided meditation for women, and they're all sort of organized a little bit differently. So we have our original Meditation for Women, which has a little bit of everything. We have sleep meditation for women, morning meditation for women. We have a panic attack meditation. We have healing meditation for women. We have meditation for anxiety podcast. We have our most recent one is meditation for moms. So we've deliberately kind of put together an encyclopedia, an entire library of guided meditations and sounds that can help women wherever they are in their particular journey. It's meant for women who have been shy about meditating. And it's also for women who have been meditating for 20, 30, 40 years and just want something cool and fresh and new and different. I really pride myself on as a writer, creating meditations that are not your run-of-the-mill, close your eyes, release your tension. I mean, yes, we have kind of your basic chakra meditations, right? Like, we have kind of basic meditations that you would see across the board in the meditation world. But where I feel like we really thrive, and one of the things that I think is so special about us, is that led by my writing, having a desire to really share a message, the meditations we have are incredibly powerful and, in my opinion, really hit to the soul of a woman. So these are meditations called like, you are enough. You are extraordinary. You have everything in you that you need. When you're feeling down about yourself, when the anxiety is rising, the lighthouse, which is a call to, make sure you're knowing your lighthouse and the center of you, coming into the center of you, come into the quiet, overflowing with gratitude. Like, all of these meditations are little poems. They're little poems of love that I've written that, much like, and I said this earlier, but much like the lyrics of your favorite songs that really hit home. And it's not just the lyrics, it's a combination between the lyrics and the music on top of it that create this whole experience that really just like rush into your heart. That's the effect that I really believe these meditations have, and that I've heard from listeners that they have. The constant feedback I'm hearing is like, I had no idea, like, I felt so alone. I didn't know other people felt that way. Or, gosh, your voice is like this motherly voice that I never had. And I needed to hear a motherly voice tell me I'm okay just the way I am. Not all of them are that, universally profound, but many of them are. And I've deliberately done it that way so that any woman showing up any day, at any time, with any emotion that she's dealing with right now, not just struggling with, but like handling, she could find something there that really speaks to her soul. And that's my intention. My intention is to give meditation to the women listening as a tool to help themselves get to know themselves better so that they can design their lives, so that they can see the difference between the noise and the voice, and they can start making decisions that are 100% them and not, dictated by other people. And when we have more women really carving out and building their own lives, the beauty about the work that I feel that I do is that when you really impact a woman, you don't impact the woman. You impact the woman, you impact her kids, you impact her family, you impact her friends, because that's who we are, right? Generally speaking, we women are like we are like the flowers and the plants in the garden that connect everyone. And so for me, that's a big, giant mission. If I can impact one woman, I'm actually impacting so many other women. If I can have one woman make a decision that is more in line with who she is, she has kids who are watching what that looks like. And that makes a really big difference. She has friends who are hearing about it. So yeah, so that's what we do. I mean, on the business model side, we're a media company. We put out, we produce, my goodness, I don't know what the number is at this point, between 200 and 300 meditations every month, episodes every month between all these 14 podcasts. And we have a YouTube channel that, if people prefer to actually have the visual, we have many of them on there. So that's what we do. And my job is just to continue growing the listenership, to get more and more women to be able to utilize these as tools that they can use at any time.
And I do know you went to meditation podcast school for 5 years and you qualified before you did your first one.
Not at all. The exact opposite, which is exactly why I was telling you about before. Like, so much imposter syndrome. Like, no, there's no reason. I could count on one hand how many times I guided a meditation for other people before I showed up to the mic for this.
So tell me about your first recording.
I was well, it wasn't as horrendous as my very first podcast recording, like for the old business show. But for this one, it was definitely like I wrote the script, which I thought was brilliant back then. Now I'm like, oh my God, that's such a bad script. But, evolution. But I just showed up to the mic and I just read it. My voice was definitely, I have found my meditation voice. I was definitely...
Go on, give me a blast of your meditation voice. So it's,
close your eyes and just relax. And probably back then it was like, so close your eyes and let your shoulders drop. It was still like I'm trying to get there, but I was not there quite yet. So I definitely had the voices in the back of my head going, what are you doing? Who are you to do this? There's no way. Like, there's so many other people more qualified to do this. And I just was like, no, get away. I know I'm supposed to do this. I don't know why, but I'm here to do this.
Yeah, that's really cool. Will there be a boys version at any point?
That's a great question. So I will kind of like dangle this carrot in that there are a lot of other niches that our content can be really good for and that we can create for. And now that I have a business system that is able to produce high quality, high quantity amounts of content, the answer is yes. It's literally like, okay, what other niches can we really fulfill? Kids is one of those niches. More gender neutral type of niches is one of those niches. Different languages is one of those niches. So there's a lot of potential out there for being able to duplicate or replicate what we have done here to different niches who I also believe can benefit from all the content that we have.
Yeah, because getting that right can't be easy. I know my own son for Christmas one time, he got me a subscription to one of these, I don't know, relax at night, headspace type ones or whatever. Yeah. I played it once. The voices bugged the crap out of me. It's like a school teachery type thing or whatever. I didn't like the accent. I was like, you're bugging me now. I refuse to fall asleep listening to you.
Screw you. This is having the opposite effect. The voice is so important. And I've been a listener of guided meditations for so long. So I knew somebody's either going to love my voice or hate my voice. And I can't change that, but that's how it's going to be. So I have to do my best to sort of be a voice that people want to listen to. And then I have two other hosts on two different shows who have obviously different voices. I've gone through a couple different voices. I've experimented with a couple voices. And yeah, it is very important for that voice to be welcoming, to be soft, to be gentle, and to be as widely accepted as possible.
Yeah, it's the essence of podcasting though, isn't it? That intimate voice in your ear. It's so gorgeous.
Right.
What's happiness to you, Katie?
Oh, happiness to me is a deep, peaceful connection with self. And I don't feel like it's something that I strive for. I feel like it's something that I feel as a result of being so deeply connected to myself. Therefore, there's no circumstances that will generate that feeling. or that I have to be reliant upon in order to feel happy. But it comes down to how connected to myself am I? How aligned am I? How grateful am I? How grounded am I? How rooted am I? And when those questions are all a big, very much, like a very big yes and very full, then happiness comes from that. It's not a state that stays around forever or even a long time. It's a constantly like touching in and out of that state. But that, I believe, is really where I am when happiness occurs.
And have you had enough of it in your life?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I've had so much happiness. I've had an enormous, like an overwhelming amount of circumstances, things, people, milestones, experiences. Like I could die today and feel like, yeah, like I feel full. Now, I absolutely also have that part of me that's like, oh no, I have more work to do here. Don't you dare. I'm not going anywhere. I have so much more to do. You can't take me away yet. But yeah, I feel like there's always more that I can do to expand that and to feel more connected to myself and to feel more aligned and to not get upset at all the little things. I can tend to get on the serious side about things. And so my husband is good at this because he's such a kid in some regard. So he constantly has to pull me back to be like, it's not that big of a deal. Come on. It's just a big game, Katie, come on. So absolutely. I've had an enormous amount of good and happiness in my life, like more so than I think that that I can be grateful for. It's so amazing.
Yeah, and I always talk to people about being happy or that state of happiness, but I think we need to put a bit of fire on things every now and then, and that's where the winning comes from. So what does winning look like for you, and even going forward?
That's a good question. Winning for me is an energy. It's a state, it's a constant in motion energy. And I feel like this is sort of, I said early on, like I'm very ambitious. I love moving towards stuff. And to me, that's that same word, and it's that same energy. And it's this, to me, that's like aliveness. I feel like I'm in evolution. I have a say in what I'm doing. I'm like constantly in this puzzle. I'm constantly changing and moving and going towards something. And it's a giant game, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to have a goal. I'm going to have this vision, but it's really just there to like, prompt me to be in this evolution, to be on this journey. So for me, that's what winning is it's just being aware that I'm on that journey and in that energy of creation, and movement and that moreness, and learning along the way.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we should give a big shout out to your pal who introduced the two of us.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. She's amazing. She has been very incredible. So Adrienne, she does some of my PR for different seasons and all that sort of stuff. So she's so good about just being able to share my story with other people and make sure other people know. So she's been wonderful with Transmedia Group.
She's just, oh my God, you have to talk to Katie.
Yeah,
and she's so right, and what a privilege. So I have one last question for you before I let you go. Your best day ever, Katie, what was it?
Ooh, I don't know if I have an answer for that. My mind is like literally like going through 80 gazillion different moments. I feel like, man, I literally have 80,000 of them, and I don't know if I could distill it to just one. Two that come to my mind, or three that come to my mind, are the day I married my husband, and the day I had my oldest Sedona and became a mom for the first time, and the day I had my daughter Savannah. They were each amazing in their own special ways, but very impactful. Changed everything. Each of those days changed everything.
Yeah, they're kind of life changers, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Katie, thank you so much for coming on the Win Happy podcast. People can follow you on the website, and I'll put links to it on the notes and everything else. You're so cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming all the way from Tampa, Florida to a place called Crookhaven in West Cork.
Okay.
In Ireland.
Okay. Well, very nice. I'm sure I wish I had your weather right now with the coolness up there, relatively speaking. So thank you, Greg. It's been such a pleasure. What a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Take it easy out there.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.